Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I'm your host, Chris Gargano, and for episode 91, we're talking about creating an edge. What do you do to be great at your job or at school or on the athletic field each and every day? What is your edge? Do you do a workout? Did you learn something the previous day by listening to a podcast, watching a TED Talk, reading something? And bringing that into what you do on a daily basis, creating an edge, being great. Our guest, Nick Trotta, and I will talk about this and so much more throughout this conversation. Nick is a native New Yorker, and this is his title: Vice President, Global Media Programming and Licensing at Major League Baseball. Nick and I met a number of years ago when I was at the San Francisco Giants. He in the league office in New York. We used to talk regularly. Nick, as you may assume, is a die-hard New York Yankee fan. We'll talk some Yankees, historically, of course, and he gives great career advice. We also talk baseball movies. Think about all the great ones that have come out, including one that Nick worked on along with others at Major League Baseball. You may remember it. Jonah Hill was in it, Brad Pitt, Robin Wright, Philip Seymour Hoffman. That's right, Moneyball. Nick will take us behind the scenes of the production of Moneyball. This and so much more on Keep the Line Moving. All right, everybody, look who it is. Nick Trotta. You are the Vice President of Global Media Programming and Licensing at Major League Baseball. Now, anybody who knows me knows I love the game. I'm unapologetic how much I love the game. You and I have known each other 16 plus years.
That's right.
When I was with the San Francisco Giants, and we'd always have contact, with footage and things of that. But let's start with you.
Okay.
Born in Queens. Take us from there.
Born in Queens. First of all, nice seeing you, and thank you for inviting me on.
You're very welcome. Great to see
Sure.
you.
Born and raised in Queens, New York. Still live in Queens. Love it. It's the world's borough.
It's right.
A great baseball borough, too.
It is. And you know the Mets really well. For goodness sakes, you're wearing Yankee colors today. Tell us about the history of your baseball love.
History of baseball love. Loved it since my earliest memories include baseball. Grew up a Yankee fan in a National League household. A bunch of disenfranchised Brooklyn Dodgers fans around me. And, always had an appreciation for the Mets. My first game was at Chase Stadium in the early 80s, but my earliest memories of Major League Baseball are Reggie Jackson in Yankee pinstripes. There's really nothing like that. Just an iconic figure moment in sports history. So I was hooked from a very early age, maybe 3 or 4 years old.
Not only are you a great guy and a great professional, but you have me excited, and we're not even 2 minutes into this, talking about Reggie in the 77 series against the Dodgers with those 3 home runs against 3 different pitchers. I'm sure that's what you're referring to, right? What an electrifying moment in the city back then. I was out in the Bay Area where I'm from. What was it like out here when Reggie was doing his thing?
To be honest, my earliest memory was actually of Reggie leaving the Yankees. I remember specifically the media coverage, and I could feel just the way people were talking about him that it was going to be some type of atmospheric change, the loss of this major star in New York. So I inherently picked up his impact, even though I didn't live through 77 and 78 as a fan.
Okay, so you start to become a baseball fan, and we're going to get to your career, and we're going to talk baseball movies. We have so much wonderful topics to discuss today, but I want to hear about you and your relationship to this great game. So you start to, as Reggie leaves, you have the Yankees. Let me do my math here. Hopefully I'm right. You're right around the early 80s. Tell me about how, with all due respect, the Yankees weren't very good in those days. But how did you love them anyway?
That's a misconception. The Yankees won the most games in Major League Baseball in the 80s. They just didn't win a World Series. So
okay, fair.
I'm just being a nitpicker because my experience was very positive. I mean, they were competitive. Billy was another one. I say Billy, you know who I'm talking about. But that cast of characters, Goose, Ron Guidry, the Gator, Dave Righetti, Dave Winfield, Willie Randolph, and ultimately Don Mattingly when he arrived really on center stage in '84. That was a game changer for me. My first real idol. I watched everything he did from pregame warmups to postgame interviews. Just, totally idolized him and studied everything I could about him and his approach to the game, because it always seemed like he was having a lot of fun, but it was also the most serious competitor on the field, and still my baseball idol to this day.
You know what's interesting, Nick, is that when people reflect on Don Mattingly as a player and as a teammate, even today, and I know he went on and has become a successful manager, coach, they speak exactly how you just spoke about him, his work ethic, how he was as a teammate. And he was so underrated and arguably should be in the Hall of Fame. You know, he had power. He was a great first baseman.
Oh,
So,
and it was the face of the
go.
sport. Baseball cards, big part of my childhood, the culture at the time. But I know you've had Steve Sachs recently on your show, and I know Steve a little bit. And Steve was a great player and a champion and an all-star in his own right. But when you talk to Steve, he will just bring up what it was like to play alongside Don Mattingly. And when you think about leadership and leading by example, you hear a lot of that when you work in baseball about him. And he's not the only one, but since he's my guy, I pay extra special attention to him.
So because you know him, what is it that you have observed firsthand? I know you haven't been in the clubhouse with him or the dugout, as a player per se, but you've heard enough anecdotal evidence. What type of manager did he become?
When the Blue Jays, where he's currently coaching, are in town, there will be packs of people 2 hours early just to watch him take fielding practice, which is kind of a thing. So, there's just consistency, universal appreciation, but also kind of, he had a look. I mean, the prototypical ball player, you talk about a gamer, you talk about, I know we're going to talk about baseball movies, but where you imagine somebody in a big spot looking like how they carry themselves. And maybe, from a marketing perspective, one of the greatest nicknames in sports history, Donnie Baseball, because that's what he was all about.
That's right. That is a great nickname. And you did mention those 80 New York Yankee teams, and I apologize, but they are defined by their championships, the 27 championships, right? They did not win one in the 80s, but I didn't mean to offend you or other Yankee fans.
It's okay.
They did have great players in the 80s, right? And then they started to get it all together in the late 90s, and then they started going on that championship run. When you think of the Yankees, do you think of the 96 and the late 90s, early 2000 teams? Like, what do you think of when you think of the Yankees?
I love the history of this game and not just the Yankees. So when you ask me that question, I think of everything, all inclusive. I could be thinking about stories about Babe Ruth, or what people would, stories people would tell me when I was a little kid about Joe DiMaggio or Mickey Mantle. I think about the 70s Bronx Zoo teams because I've read every book and, grew up on the tail end of that era. I think of the 90s because I came of age as that team came of age. I was in college when they won in 96, and I got, a real exciting run as a fan right before I joined baseball. But, you appreciate the way they do business and conduct the brand too, and how they preserve it, and how what the Yankees are today is pretty consistent with what the Yankees meant 60 years ago.
Well said. And Nick, people ask me, hey, you live out on the East Coast now. You're from the San Francisco Bay Area, born in San Francisco, a Giant fan for generations. What do you think of the Mets and Yankees? And I say this all the time. I respect the heck out of both franchises. I am not fans of them, but I respect them. How can you not respect the Yankees? And quite frankly, the Mets. They have a great both have great announcers.
Great.
Both present themselves incredibly well. It's a wonderful place to watch and consume baseball, the tri-state area. I'm sure you would agree.
Oh, it's part of the culture. I have a great appreciation for the Mets, their fan base, their organization, their history too, because I didn't get to experience the Brooklyn Dodgers or the New York Giants firsthand, but I grew up around the memories of it. I grew up not far from the Gil Hodges Bridge. Erskine Street is the last exit on the Belt Parkway when you leave Brooklyn, named for Carl Erskine. The Jackie Robinson Parkway is a highway I take all the time. So the Brooklyn Dodgers are very alive. Spiritually, the culture of it still exists. And, that National League lineage is just different. So when you think, the Ebbets Field, like rotunda of Citi Field, Willie Mays' number, finally retired in Queens too, where it should be. And I'm happy the Mets did that. I just always loved the history of it because I really love listening to the debates of Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. From people who saw it firsthand. So it's still very much a part, New York baseball, is it for me.
Oh, I can understand why, my friend. I love that you mentioned Willie, and you and I could talk about so many different topics in the great game. Very sad to see the passing recently of Willie Mays. What a legend. Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, and, Joe DiMaggio, you bring in everybody, Hank Aaron. We could go on and on, but I love the way the San Francisco Giants celebrated Willie's legacy. I don't know if I'm sure you caught some of that. Your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I mean it was clear to me, and I obviously knew you at the Giants and know a bunch of colleagues over there. Willie was family in a way that is just different than most retired players or legends. Even the presence he occupied in the game. I mean, you can't come across anybody in this office, whether it's somebody who worked with him, played with him. There's like magnitudes of stardom, and Willie's at the top.
So let's talk about you, right? Your career to be successful in Major League Baseball, in the front office, the league office is where you've been. What has been your experience? Like, how have you, because I know you have been at this job and then you got promoted and then you got promoted. How have you done that, Nick? How have you constructed a career that you should be very proud of, which I'm sure you are?
Oh, I'm proud of it. I'm not sure how that, all of that just happened. I think by not paying attention to those things, maybe it actually helps you in that direction. Focus on the game, remaining a passionate fan. I make sure to get to a lot of baseball every year, 20, 30 games if I can, try to set some personal goals. Sometimes I'll sit and watch a game. I'll keep score in a book. Sometimes I'll just walk around the concourse and observe fan behavior. Just listen in. Do they like the ice cream? Do they like the organ music? What are they buying in the shops? I mean, the culture of it has always mattered to me. I played hardball until I was about 13 years old, but that to me was never the leading element of my relationship with the game because I had so much else going on. Baseball cards, like I mentioned earlier, was a huge part of my relationship to baseball. Listening to stories from my dad, my grandfather, even some of the old timers who lived on my block would be very generous in sharing their experiences. Playing wiffle ball every single day for, I don't know, like 20 years. All of that helps. So I really try to retain as much of that. You want to stay young if you can. And now I'm a dad. So getting to coach, I have a rule. If my kids ask me to play catch, I have to say yes, unless it's too dark and I can't see. But just so to me, it's the full relationship with the game, I think has helped me along on the career path as well.
So you always have that as the foundation, and that makes total sense to me. And there's a wonderful, the way you speak about it, the respect that you have, the reverence that you have for the game, but you're also a talented professional. So let's shift over to that side. I know you're a humble gentleman. You don't like talking about yourself. I could tell. I respect that. But I will ask you, how do you think you've developed in your role to get to where you are now, which is a lot of responsibility?
Well, I'm doing this a long time, and I'm starting to think maybe I was meant to do what I'm doing. It's not, I don't allow that thought to creep in all too often. But when out of college, I actually worked in the music business for a long time. And I think that came from my other great love, which is of cinema. So I've always been a huge movie fan. If I wasn't watching or playing baseball, I was growing up watching Star Wars, I guess. But out of college, I had an opportunity to graduate a little bit earlier. And I wasn't ready to entertain the thought of living in LA at the time. I wanted to stay in New York, and the music business historically has been centered in New York. So I did that for a while. But when I left the music, and I had a great time, it was a great run. But when I announced internally that I was leaving the record label and I was going to baseball, I was surprised by the reaction. Some of my most trusted colleagues said, "Yeah, what took you so long to figure that out? That's where you were supposed to be. You were always taking the company Yankees tickets and Mets tickets. You were playing fantasy baseball all the time." So I think I just had a knack. I know how the entertainment side works. I'd worked on music videos when I worked in the music business. I'd written treatments. I'd been on set. None of that was, very daunting or intimidating to me. But knowing how to apply it to baseball, we have 150 years of stories, characters. We have over 100 years of archival material in our library, which is over 1 million hours of content going back at least to 1905, if not earlier. We can help you tell any story you can imagine through the prism of baseball.
Jeez, you've given us a huge jumping off point. And by the way, I would love to clip off what you just said and send it to universities about finding your passion and marrying the two, right? Doing what you love to do and then getting paid for it. But the footage that you may, I could watch Babe Ruth take batting practice for my whole day. That is so captivating.
I've done that.
I have too, not all day, but it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so your role right now is it's expanded, but in the early days, you're helping content creators, movie producers incorporate the game in the truest sense, right? And authenticity. So how has the job evolved to where you are now, and like some of the higher level things you're overseeing by way of documentaries and
Yeah.
30 for 30 and all the wonderful projects you've been associated with?
So I mentioned all the other elements of baseball that forge a deep relationship. I forged a deep relationship with, collecting cards and going to games. I failed to mention the baseball movie itself was a huge piece of my, relationship to the sport. And the baseball movie, I use that in all caps, is a recognized genre of cinema that's existed for 100 years. And I like to think it's a big part of my role to ensure the continuation of the baseball movie. The baseball movie has basically mirrored the history of the evolution of movies themselves. Babe Ruth was a silent movie star. So it's always been there. Genre filmmaking is an important part of the Hollywood business because for a number of reasons. One, it's reliable. People are going in with some expectations, and it's the job of the filmmakers to either confirm or subvert those expectations in the movie itself. But who doesn't like a baseball movie? Even non-sports fans, if there are any, enjoy a baseball movie. I'm sure you've got a list of your favorites.
Of course I do. It's right in front of me. But I want to hear yours.
Okay.
Should we start with you? Because I want to dissect these.
Oh,
these are just
okay.
tremendous. Okay. What are yours?
My favorite baseball movies. It's a short list. I've seen dozens, if not hundreds. So I would like to reserve the right to say that I can shrink and expand the list as necessary.
Of course.
But if you get me on any given day, it's probably the Bad News Bears, the original, The Natural, Field of Dreams, Ken Burns' original 9-inning series baseball, and for selfish reasons, but also legitimately, I'll throw Moneyball in there too.
Why do you say selfish reasons? Because you worked on it?
I got to work on it. That was one of the things that got me out of the music business and into baseball. I had a cousin that would nag me to read the book Moneyball, and I was resistant. I don't really know why, but then I did. And then I remember thinking to myself, if people work inside of baseball that are thinking of the game, that love it and respect it, but are thinking of it in new ways, I think I want to be there. So I joined in spring of 2005. I was here for opening day 2005. Sure enough, a couple years later, there it was. So I spent basically 2 years on that movie. I was there on the first day of shooting. I was there on the last day of shooting, a little bit in the middle, and then, played a number of roles there on that film, from providing authenticity to kind of like just pitching some small ideas and little Easter eggs that would make sense to an avid fan. One thing we've learned is that authenticity does matter, and authenticity doesn't necessarily mean complete historical accuracy. Authenticity means it has to feel right to the viewer, because you don't want a baseball fan being taken out of the story because something is wrong. There's some famous stories that Gary Cooper was right-handed, and they filmed him in reverse in Pride of the Yankees. And there's ways. So there's always been this acknowledgement that authenticity matters. And the thought that I would get to play some type of role on that on a major studio feature was just that was kind of career making for me.
I can understand why. And what a great story. By the way, I love your list. We'll dissect it.
All right.
But I really want to hit this Moneyball, no pun intended.
Sure.
What a wonderful film. What a wonderful film. It was, the actors were great.
Agreed.
Everything, the authenticity, the dugout, the story arc, and the emotion. But what was it like being part of the 2-year process? If you were to summarize, and when you think about it all these years later, what is that feeling that you have from being part of such a major success in production?
Well, we can only take credit for what we did on it, but what we did, I think we did right. And that's kind of what I'm most proud of, is that we made sure this was based on a true story, true events. So it had to feel real. So the equipment, and I wasn't alone. We had a whole team of colleagues at the league and at the teams, at the clubs, and our partners, making sure it was right. But I remember thinking in this at the time, it was a period movie, meaning we were telling a story from another era in time, even though it was only like 8 years later. Things change over 8 years. If you worked in sports a long time. I had a little bit of the joke was I had a little bit of a CGI slush fund, because I would find things in the ballparks that we were shooting in that weren't the same as they were in 2002. And I would point it out, and they'd have to paint it out. So just knowing that we got it right, and that it feels like a real world, and the baseball looks really good, and the ballparks look great, and we got it.
You did get it. My gosh. All right, let's go to your list. Okay, so you have a great list. Ken Burns' movie, tremendous. That I don't see that in the same because it's what do you call them? A series, right? It's a
Yeah.
series.
Well, I group it in there intentionally. I think to qualify as a baseball movie, there's a form in a formal sense. You have to hit certain criteria. I'm curious to hear what your list is, but I'm gonna warm read you here. I'm betting that every one of your favorite baseball movies starts with a ragtag bunch of characters who don't necessarily get along, and then something happens, and then there's a very entertaining winning streak sequence. But ultimately, there's a big moment, bottom of the ninth, and a chance for an individual to do something special. Like that's the core of every baseball movie, and I think that works for a number of reasons. Number one, it mirrors the real life game, and our relationship as fans to the sport. But Ken Burns's series, has hundreds of those instances. It's about the real life story of all these teams that wild cast of characters, very entertaining, but dozens of these big moments historically that there's always a chance to do something special that will create a legacy. So that's why it's there. Plus, it's also a masterclass in documentary filmmaking. Eventually I got to work on 2 projects with Ken and his team, and that was another highlight of the career so far.
Absolutely. No, we got to meet him. He came out to San Francisco, and he's in one of our documentaries that chronicled those championship Giants teams. And what a class act. Nice man. So talented. All right. Can I give you my list here?
Yeah, please.
So I have Moneyball as 1. I have Field of Dreams as 2. And then I have a kind of a 2A. You might be surprised. The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, which I loved very much. And then I also have an underrated film in there, but I'm a major Clint Eastwood fan, which is Trouble with the Curve. I loved that movie. What was Amy Adams, right? She
Yes,
was in
and
that.
Justin
And
Timberlake.
Justin Timberlake, yes,
Yeah.
as the Boston scout / wannabe or eventual broadcaster. But can we talk about, in my opinion, an underrated movie, which is The Rookie with Dennis Quaid?
Sure.
Your thoughts on that movie?
Listen, The Rookie holds up, and it works because it really happened. I think the best baseball movie is the game itself. Every night there could be up to 15 games that are basically, reality show documentaries. So every one of those elements I described can happen tonight. And that's the beauty of baseball, more than any other sport. I don't know how many players we have active, 1,000 in the majors right now. That means 1,000 different paths to the majors. Like there really isn't the set. That's one of the fascinating things. It's not like basketball or football where the majority go through the same route to get to the show. So the Rookie, I think, is like it's unique. It's not the most common route to the big leagues, but it really happened. And I think that's one of the most appealing things about baseball. So that's a pretty good choice for your list.
Thank you. That validates me. That makes me feel good. Thank you very much. So you just you triggered a memory, and I can't help myself. I have to get a San Francisco Giant. I related it to Willie Mays' legacy, but now I'm going to relate it to what would be a great story, which was told, but it's also kind of similar with what you said, the path to the majors and unexpected moments. You know where I'm going with this. The 2010 NLCS, Cody Ross hitting in the 8th slot with the 2 home runs off Roy Halladay. Do you remember that?
That's a movie, of course.
That's a movie.
That's
right?
exactly what I'm talking about. That's what makes Roy Hobbs' ridiculously fantastical home run off the stadium lights at the end of the Natural sort of believable, because these moments do happen in baseball.
You know what? You have a sense of gratitude with the way you speak about your career, the game. It really comes through. And that's you don't need me saying this to you, for goodness sakes. You're leading your life, but that's a compliment to you. And here's where I'm going. I want to follow up on I'm going in a roundabout way of following up on what you said about Oracle Park, which was going to work there for myself every day, right? For 8 seasons was just, I was grateful every day walking into that place. It was like a scene out of a movie, right? And you have the presence of mind. I was whatever age, it doesn't matter, but just seeing like, oh my gosh, this is my workplace. I'm going to go to the ball game tonight. I got to work. I got a lot of things to pay attention to, but looking out at the bay, McCovey Cove and the Bay Bridge and just the beauty of it all was really, it was, heartfelt. There's no other way of saying it.
Absolutely. I still get that feeling. What you're describing is very emotional and personal, but it's shared by many. I mean, somebody made those choices for your benefit, for the benefit of you and millions of fans. And that always, I've always liked that, because we're not just a sport. We're basically in the theme park business. We're an experience. We play 2,430 regular season games every year. That's a lot of pressure to entertain. And most of the time the game itself is entertaining, but sometimes you need some other things that create the appeal or add to the appeal.
It's just such a beautiful game. And that's a great point you just made. Like for all the men and women that are putting on the music, the fireworks, the whole presentation. What does it feel like to be part of a Padre game, a Pirate game, an Oriole game, right? It doesn't matter. What does it feel? And there's so many people behind that let's give a shout out to all of them, right? It's like they're so talented, and they care so much, about making that unique experience for the fan that's coming in for the first time, Nick.
And they're expert at what they do.
Yes.
I think that gets lost because they don't seek the spotlight, but the people who run the entertainment around the game are extremely talented. I've had the benefit of knowing many of them, and I've taken a lot of what I've seen and learned into my, Little League coaching career too. You come to one of the games I coach, you're going to hear music from Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, or a Phillies game, because I kind of seen what works and gets the players reacting and the spectators interested in things. But I remember something early in my career, I got to sit in the Yankee Stadium booth level next to Bob Shepard, who was a legendary PA announcer for the Yankees for many, many years. I think, 55, 60 years, something like that. And this was towards the end of his career, maybe the last 2 or 3 seasons he was working at Yankee Stadium. So if anybody could get away with just doing what they'd done the day before, the week before, it was a legend like Mr. Shepard, but that wasn't his approach at all. In fact, he didn't recognize me because I didn't work at the Yankees. I was there for business reasons. And he called me into his booth, which was a very intimidating moment in my life. But he said, "I don't recognize you. What are you here for?" And I told him, and he said, "Okay, take this as a souvenir." And he gave me his script for the night. I still have it. And it was down to the minute. You know what that looks like. Every announcement, please rise, remove your caps, and salute the national anthem. And he would check mark every single thing. He had every player's name that he would announce phonetically spelled next to the actual spelling, because it really mattered to him. And his attention to detail was for the benefit of the fans, who were then entertained and have great memories of his presentation. So that was never lost on me. What these people do is extremely important.
That's a beautiful story. That talks about his kindness, bringing you into the booth, showing you the detail by which he worked. And that is the reason Derek Jeter, right, for the rest of his career, kept that tape of the announcement from Bob each and every time he took an at-bat at Yankee Stadium.
Sure.
That's awesome. Should we go to All-Star Moments? You ready, Nick?
All right.
What advice would you give somebody coming into the profession, let's just call it Major League Baseball? What would you say to that individual?
Really know the game beyond, I'd say, average fan level of knowledge. I'm not saying you got to know the name of every general manager in the majors, but that wouldn't hurt you. So know the history, know the current game, know the trends, know where technology and science are leading the game. Treat it very seriously. Study everything about it.
All right, listen. I'm trying to not stump you, but I'm trying to make you think.
All right.
So the second question is off baseball. What's your favorite vacation spot and why?
Anything that involves the whole family. Just got off of a family cruise with extended family. That was amazing. My parents for their 50th anniversary, my sister and her family and kids, all my wife and kids. So I'm starting to appreciate more time just with the people more than the sites and locations and things to do.
3, best advice you've ever received.
Best advice I've ever received. If you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all.
4, I said these were customized. I'm assuming baseball is your favorite sport. What is your second favorite sport?
That's a good one. I've been a fan of many sports in my life. I've played everything. I ran track in high school. I played a ton of basketball, played some football. Recently, aside from softball, which, is distinct from baseball, and I have a daughter who's very active in sport, and I'm helping coach. But I've picked up pickleball, which is a ton of fun.
Nice. All right, 5, how do you deal with adversity?
By dealing with it. That's it. It's a math problem. I was never a great student in math, so it never came easy to me. and you got to work the problem. You got to understand what it is. I don't know that I'm starting to think that there's no such thing as a big problem or a little problem. It's just a problem. And ascribing a size or flavor to the problem isn't necessarily going to help you get through it.
Couple more. 6. How do you give yourself fuel?
You got to find edges. Not Michael Jordan, take everything personal edge, but what can I be doing today? What can I be doing that nobody else is doing right now to get ahead? What kind of research can I be doing?
7. What is the number one leadership challenge in our future?
Maybe losing focus of what leadership really is or should be. I've always viewed leadership as something that's done by example. I think of my earliest experiences working as a 15-year-old busboy. I worked in a restaurant where the owner was doing prep work in the kitchen. And to me, that was leadership. Later on, I worked in a catering hall as an 18-year-old where the owner would be picking up gum or tissues off the floor. To me, when I think of leadership, I also think of putting people in position to make the right choices. And we have some great leadership here who are very empowering and trust expertise. So it's a matter of making choices. It's not necessarily gung-ho. You hear a lot of so-and-so leads from the front or lead from the back. To me, it's like leader is always there on your shoulder.
All right. That's a mic drop. So well done. Thank you very much, Nick Trotta. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Chris Gargano, for making me talk about this stuff.
And we thank Nick very much for being on the show. I have 3 takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, overcoming adversity. You heard what Nick said, that wisdom of baseball is a daily story. Just tune into a game and you'll watch a player overcoming adversity. How did they get to the major leagues? How are they succeeding now? How did they overcome striking out 3 times last night? Well, it unveils itself right in front of us each and every night if you watch and study the game. Number 2, baseball in totality, the entertainment of baseball. When you walk into a ballpark, it's not just the grass, the dirt, and the players. It's everything. The smell of popcorn, beer, going with your family, the emotions involved from your childhood to watching it now. And if you're a kid right now, you are in for a great treat. There's music. There's the PA announcer. There's the organ music. There's so much to baseball that is wonderful that Nick articulated beautifully. The edge is my 3rd takeaway. Getting that edge, doing the work to make yourself valuable. What will you do to create your own edge? Very valuable from Nick. Hope you enjoyed the conversation, everybody. I did. I will see you next week. Give us a like, a follow, a thumbs up, whatever it is that you do to appreciate us, because we appreciate you. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals, while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal, have a great week, everybody.